On December 19, 2025, something happened that the scientific community is still struggling to explain. The interstellar object 3I Atlas made its closest approach to Earth, and what occurred during that flyby has left every assumption we had about this object in ruins. If you are listening to this, you need to understand that what I'm about to share represents the most significant astronomical event in human history, because the data that came back from December 19th doesn't just challenge our understanding of comets. It challenges our understanding of what's possible. For months, we were told to look away. We were told it was just a rock, a dirty snowball, a fragment of a dead solar system passing through the night. But the data that emerged in the weeks leading up to the flyby told a different story. And what happened on December 19th confirmed a fears, or perhaps our greatest hopes. A preprint paper appeared on the ARXiv server titled The Anti-Tail of 3I Atlas Wobbled Before Perihelion. The findings were extraordinary. The anti-tail of 3I Atlas wasn't just a trick of the light, it was a physical structure and it was massive. According to the measurements, this feature extended for a distance larger than the gap between the Earth and the Moon. A trail of material or something else stretching out for over 400,000 kilometers. But size wasn't the smoking gun, it was the movement. Comet tails are passive. They are dust and gas pushed by the solar wind and radiation pressure. They drift, they flow, they do not wobble. The paper detailed a series of oscillations detected in the anti-tail just before the object reached its perihelion, its closest point to the Sun. These weren't random fluctuations. They were rhythmic, precise, almost mechanical. Imagine a ship at sea. Its wake trails behind it. If the ship turns, the wake curves. If the ship corrects its course repeatedly, the wake wobbles. The data showed a frequency of oscillation that matched no known natural outgassing process. If this were a simple vent of gas, it would be chaotic or it would rotate with the object. But 3I Atlas was not rotating in a way that explained this. The wobble was independent of the object's spin. Dr. Avi Loeb released a commentary on this, and his words spread across every encrypted channel in the scientific community. He pointed out that a wobble of this magnitude, involving this much mass, implied a transfer of momentum. In simple terms, something pushed back. If you are trying to stabilize a craft or a rock, if you want to stick to the official story, against the intense gravitational pull of the Sun, you make adjustments. You fire thrusters, you shift weight, you create a wobble in your wake. And there was more. The density of this anti-tail was wrong. Spectroscopic analysis came back with readings that baffled the models. We saw absorption lines that shouldn't be there. It wasn't just water, ice, and dust. There were heavy elements, complex signatures. Some whispered that it looked less like a tail and more like an exhaust plume, a magnetic exhaust. We were looking at an object that was correcting its path, an object that was trailing a structure larger than the distance to the Moon, an object that was approaching our doorstep with surgical precision. And the mainstream media, they talked about a beautiful celestial event, and they told you to get your binoculars. They didn't tell you that the tail was vibrating. Why? Maybe because they didn't know how to explain it, or maybe because they did. We saw a pattern. First, the silence from Maven when 3I Atlas passed Mars, then the dimming of the object as it approached, and then this, a controlled oscillation in a structure that defied physics. The closer it got, the less it looked like a comet and the more it looked like a probe. We had to ask ourselves, if this was a machine, what was it doing? Was it braking? Was it scanning? Or was it simply stabilizing itself for the flyby? The wobble occurred right before perihelion. That was the point of maximum stress. That was the point where you would need to be most careful if you were navigating a perceptible shift in its orbit. That occurred exactly when the wobble was detected. It changed lanes. We tracked it. We watched it. But the course correction was just the beginning. What happened on December 19th made that look like a minor detail. We talked about the anti-tail, but we didn't talk about what it was made of. The spectral analysis from the deep field arrays in Chile came back, and it was impossible. And then it coasted toward us. The trajectory models showed a slight deviation, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in its orbit that occurred exactly when the wobble was detected. It changed lanes. We tracked it. We watched it. But the course correction was just the beginning. What happened on December 19th made that look like a minor detail. We talked about the anti-tail, but we didn't talk about what it was made of. The spectral analysis from the deep field arrays in Chile came back, and it was impossible. Avi Loeb published an analysis that put the sheer scale of this thing into perspective. He calculated the dimensions of this anti-tail structure. It wasn't just a tail, it was a bridge. It extended for over 400,000 kilometers. Let that sink in. That is larger than the distance from the Earth to the Moon. Imagine a structure, coherent, organized, and wobbling, that could bridge the gap between our world and our satellite. And it was attached to an object that was supposedly just a few hundred meters across. The math didn't add up. The mass ratio was all wrong, unless the tail wasn't mass, unless the tail was energy. And here was the kicker. This structure was interacting with the solar wind in a way that defied fluid dynamics. Normal cometary tails are passive. They are blown back by the sun's particles like smoke in the wind. They are messy. They are turbulent. They disperse. This tail, it was cutting through the solar wind. It was maintaining its shape against the stream of charged particles coming from the sun. It was coherent. That implied one thing: magnetic containment. If you have a magnetic field strong enough to shield a structure that size from the solar wind, you do not have a rock. You have a generator. You have an engine. And this engine was parking itself on our front lawn. Science Alert confirmed the timeline. December 19th was the date of the closest approach. They called it a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They told you to look for a faint, fuzzy patch in the constellation of Lepus, but they left out the most important part. The object was dimming as it approached. Think about it. As an object gets closer to Earth, it should be getting brighter. That is basic physics. Sunlight reflects off the ice. It should be flaring. It should be visible to the naked eye. But 3I Atlas did the opposite. It went dark. The magnitude dropped. It faded into the background stars. It was almost as if it knew it was being watched. It was engaging a cloak. Or maybe it was simply absorbing the energy we were trying to shine on it. Why would an interstellar object want to hide right before it passed the only inhabited planet in the system? And that brought us to the final piece of the puzzle, the signal, or rather, the lack of one. We had been listening for radio waves. We had been listening for pings. The SETI Institute turned the Allen Telescope Array toward it. The Green Bank Telescope was listening. But what if we were listening for the wrong thing? What if the signal wasn't a beep, but a shadow? The light curve data that leaked from the amateur network showed a pattern that looked suspiciously like binary code hidden in the dimming events. This was the photometric light curve of the object over the 48 hours before closest approach. For those of you who aren't astronomers, let me explain what you are seeing. A light curve is a graph of brightness over time. For a normal comet, a dirty snowball as NASA likes to call them, this line should be messy. It should be jagged, random, noisy. Comets rotate, they tumble, they have uneven surfaces. The light reflects off ice, then rock, then ice again. It is chaotic. But look at this line. It was flat, perfectly flat, and then drop, flat, drop, flat, drop. These weren't random fluctuations. These were pulses. The object dimmed by exactly 0. 4 magnitudes every 144 minutes. Regular as a clock. Precise as a metronome. Nature does not make straight lines. Nature does not keep time to the millisecond. We were seeing a strobe effect, but it wasn't flashing light at us. It was blocking light from us. It was an inverse signal. And here's where it connected to the paper about the wobbling tail. When you overlaid the graph of the tail's wobble with the graph of these dimming events, they matched perfectly. When the tail swung left, the object dimmed. When the tail swung right, the object returned to baseline. This was not a tumble. This was a mechanism. Think about the physics of that. A structure larger than the distance to the moon was swinging back and forth in perfect sync with the rotation of the main body. That required a rigid connection. That required structural integrity that ice and dust simply do not have. If you tried to swing a cloud of dust that size back and forth, it would dissipate. It would tear itself apart. but this structure held together. So what were we looking at? We were looking at a massive, stabilized structure that was orienting itself, and it was orienting itself relative to us. The Science Alert report confirmed that 3I Atlas was moving through the constellation of Lepus, the Hare. It was just south of Orion. They told you it was faint. They told you it was hard to see, but they didn't tell you why it was hard to see. It was hard to see because it was absorbing 90% of the light that hit it. The albedo, the reflectivity, was anomalously low. A fresh comet spewing fresh ice should be bright. It should be like a mirror. This thing was like Vanta Black. Why would you build a probe that absorbs light? 2 reasons: stealth or power collection. If that tail was actually a collector, a solar sail, or a magnetic scoop, it would appear dark because it was harvesting the energy, not reflecting it. And as it approached the point of closest approach on December 19th, it was fully deployed. December 19th was the point of maximum efficiency, the point where the sun was at its back and Earth was directly in its path. If you were going to transmit a massive packet of data back home, or if you were going to scan a target planet with high-resolution sensors, this is exactly how you would configure your ship. You would stabilize it. You would deploy your collectors. You would dampen your thermal signature. And you would wait for the alignment. The alignment happened 3 days ago. And there was one more thing, a detail buried in the appendix of the arch of paper. The wobble wasn't constant. It was accelerating. The frequency was increasing. The heartbeat was getting faster. Whatever this machine was doing, it was spinning up. It was preparing for something, but it was pointing at something else. The most terrifying part came next. We knew that the anti-tail of 3I Atlas, that massive wobbling structure stretching out behind the object, was accelerating its oscillation. It was spinning up, but the question remained, what was it pointing at? If this were a comet, the tail would point away from the sun. That is the law of physics. The solar wind pushes the gas and dust outward. It is simple. It is predictable. But 3I Atlas broke the law. The astrometric data, triangulated from observatories in Australia and South Africa, showed that the anti-tail was not aligned with the solar wind vector. It was off by 12 degrees. 12 degrees might not sound like much, but in celestial mechanics, it is everything. It meant the tail was not being pushed. It was being aimed. So we traced the line, we followed the vector of that massive 400,000 kilometer structure out into the deep black. We wanted to see where it led. It pointed directly at the galactic center, Sagittarius A star, the heart of the Milky Way, the same direction it came from. Think about the implications. You have an object that entered our system, performed a gravity assist around our star, stabilized itself, deployed a massive structure that defied the solar wind, and then locked that structure onto its point of origin. It wasn't a tail, it was an antenna, a high-gain transmission array. And the wobble, the oscillation we detected, that was the modulation. That was the signal being encoded into the carrier wave. We witnessed a data dump as it passed Earth. 3I Atlas beamed everything it had learned back home. It uploaded the scan data. It reported on us. And this brings us to the most chilling realization of all, the timing. Why December 19th? Why was the closest approach so important? Because on December 19th, Earth passed directly between 3I Atlas and the Sun. For a brief window of time, we were in its shadow, or rather, it was in ours. This was the moment of maximum signal clarity, the moment when the solar interference was blocked by our own planet, creating a quiet zone for the receiver. Or perhaps it used our planet's gravity to lens the signal, boosting its power for the long journey back to the core. We weren't just observers in this event. We were a component of the transmission. We were the lens. The scientists at Science Alert called this a close approach. They were excited about the proximity. They told you to watch the skies because it would be beautiful, but they missed the bigger picture. This wasn't a flyby. This was a handshake. We were indexed. We were cataloged. And 3 days ago, the file was sent. So what happens now that the upload is complete? What happens now that the probe has finished its mission? Does it go dormant? Does it self-destruct? Or does it receive a new command? There was one final anomaly that emerged in the hours before closest approach. Something that was buried in the raw data logs of the Deep Space Network. A series of pings that started in the final hours before the flyby. They weren't coming from the comet. They were coming to it. Someone was answering. And now, 3 days later, we are standing on the other side of the most significant astronomical event in human history. December 19th has passed. 3I Atlas made its closest approach at 270 million kilometers away. A stone's throw in cosmic terms. But the story doesn't end there. In fact, it's just beginning. The wobbling tail, the dimming pattern, the course correction, the magnetic containment, the transmission to the galactic center, the incoming pings. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. 3I Atlas was not natural. It was artificial. It was a probe. And it completed its mission 3 days ago. Now we must ask ourselves, what are the implications moving forward? First, we must accept that we are not alone in the universe. The evidence is overwhelming. An artificial object from another star system just passed through our solar system, collected data on Earth, and transmitted that data back to its point of origin. Second, we must understand that we have been observed, cataloged, indexed. Whatever intelligence sent 3I Atlas now has detailed information about our planet, our species, our civilization. Third, we must prepare for what comes next. If 3I Atlas was a scout, a probe sent ahead to gather information, then the logical next step is a follow-up mission, either more probes or something larger. The data transmission that occurred on December 19th was sent to the galactic center, 26,000 light-years away. Even if the signal traveled at the speed of light, it would take 26,000 years to arrive. But what if it didn't travel at the speed of light? What if the technology that created 3I Atlas has found ways around that limitation? The wobbling tail, the magnetic containment, the energy absorption, all of these suggest technology far beyond our current understanding. If they can build a probe that travels between star systems, that can navigate gravity wells with precision, that can transmit data across galactic distances, then perhaps they can also receive that data much faster than we think possible. And if they can receive it quickly, they can respond quickly. The incoming pings detected in the hours before closest approach suggest that 3I Atlas was already in communication with something. Perhaps it was receiving final instructions. Perhaps it was confirming mission parameters. Or perhaps it was being told what to do next. Because 3I Atlas didn't disappear after December 19th. It's still out there, still moving through our solar system, still potentially active. The question is, what is it doing now? Is it dormant, its mission complete, simply coasting back into interstellar space? Or is it waiting, monitoring, preparing for Phase 2? The scientific community is divided. Some believe the flyby was the end of the event. 3I Atlas collected its data, transmitted it home, and is now leaving. We may never see it again, and we may never know if its creators received the transmission or what they plan to do with the information. Others believe this is just the beginning, that December 19th was a milestone, not a conclusion. That 3I Atlas is still active, still observing, still communicating, and that what comes next will make the flyby look like a minor event. I fall into the second camp. The precision of this object's behavior, the sophistication of its technology, the deliberate nature of its trajectory, all of this suggests a carefully planned mission. And missions of this complexity don't end with a single data transmission. There are follow-up protocols, contingency plans, next steps. 3I Atlas may have completed Phase 1, reconnaissance. But Phase 2 could be anything. More detailed observation, sample collection, direct contact. Or perhaps Phase 2 isn't about 3I Atlas at all. Perhaps the data transmission on December 19th was a signal to other probes, other missions, other intelligences. Perhaps we're about to receive visitors. The implications for humanity are staggering. If we are being observed by an intelligence capable of interstellar travel, capable of building probes that can navigate our solar system with precision, capable of technology that defies our understanding of physics, then we must ask ourselves, what do they want? Are they simply curious, conducting a galactic survey of inhabited worlds? Or do they have specific intentions regarding Earth? The fact that 3I Atlas transmitted data back to the galactic center suggests that Earth is of interest. We're not just another rock in space. We're worth reporting on, worth cataloging, worth remembering. But interest can be benign or malevolent, scientific curiosity or strategic assessment. We have no way of knowing which. What we do know is that the universe is watching us now. We've been seen. We've been documented. And that information is traveling through the cosmos, potentially reaching intelligences we can't imagine. The next few months, the next few years, will be critical. We need to continue monitoring 3I Atlas as it leaves our solar system. We need to watch for any changes in its behavior, any new transmissions, any signs that it's receiving instructions. We need to scan the skies for other objects. If 3I Atlas was a scout, there may be others. Other probes, other missions, other visitors that we haven't detected yet. We need to prepare ourselves mentally and technologically for the possibility of contact, not the Hollywood version of contact, with massive ships appearing over major cities. But the more likely scenario, subtle signals, distant observations, gradual revelation, and we need to decide, as a species, how we want to respond. Do we try to communicate back? Do we attempt to send our own message to the galactic center? Or do we remain silent, hoping that we haven't attracted unwanted attention? These are questions that humanity has never had to face before. Questions that science fiction has explored, but that we now must confront as reality. December 19th, 2025 will be remembered as the day everything changed, the day we confirmed that we are not alone, the day an artificial object from another star system passed through our solar system and reported back home. But it will also be remembered as the day we entered a new era. An era where humanity must grapple with its place in a universe that is clearly inhabited by other intelligences. An era where we are no longer the observers, but the observed. The wobbling tail, the dimming pattern, the course correction, the magnetic containment, the transmission to the galactic center, the incoming pings. All of it points to one inescapable conclusion. 3I Atlas was not natural. It was artificial. It was a probe, and it has completed its mission. Now, we must live with the implications of that mission. We must prepare for what comes next. We must accept that the universe is more complex, more populated, more mysterious than we ever imagined. And we must ask ourselves, are we ready for what's coming? Because something is coming. The data has been sent. The report has been filed, Earth has been cataloged, and somewhere 26,000 light years away, or perhaps much closer than we think, something is receiving that data, something is learning about us, something is deciding what to do next. The countdown didn't end on December 19th. It began. We are now living in the aftermath of first contact. Not the dramatic, obvious contact of science fiction, but the subtle, undeniable contact of reality. 3I Atlas came. It saw, it reported, and now we wait. We wait to see if more probes arrive. We wait to see if the transmission was received. We wait to see what the next phase of this cosmic interaction will be. But we don't wait passively. We observe, we document, we prepare. We continue to search the skies, to analyze the data, to piece together the puzzle of what 3I Atlas really was, and what its mission truly meant. Because the story of 3I Atlas is not over. It's just beginning, and humanity's role in that story is yet to be written. The universe has shown us that we are not alone. Now, we must decide what we do with that knowledge. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and most importantly, stay ready. Because the implications of December 19th will unfold over the coming months and years, and what we do now, how we respond, how we prepare, will determine humanity's future in a universe that is clearly watching us. This was not natural. This was not random. This was intentional. And now we must live with the consequences of that intention.